Traditionally, both the White House Counsel and the Attorney General have issued a memo requiring all contact between the two institutions to occur only between the Office of White House Counsel and the Attorney General or Deputy Attorney General. The next administration should re-examine this policy and determine whether it might be more efficient or more appropriate for communication to occur through additional channels. The White House Counsel also works closely with the DOJ Office of Legal Counsel to seek opinions on, for example, matters of policy development and the constitutionality of presidential power and privileges, and with OLA and the DOJ Office of Legal Policy on presidential judicial nominees. When a new president takes office, he will need to decide expeditiously how to handle any major ongoing litigation or other pending legal matters that might present a challenge to his agenda. To offer guidance, the White House Counsel must get up to speed as quickly as possible on all significant ongoing legal challenges across the executive branch that might affect the new administration's policy agenda, and must be prepared at the outset of the administration to present recommendations to the president, including recommendations for reconsidering or reversing positions of the previous administration in any significant litigation. This review will usually require consulting with the new political leadership at the Justice Department, including during the transition period. No day is predictable at the White House. Therefore, to handle the pace and volatility of affairs, the Office of White House Counsel must offer measured legal guidance in a timely manner. This often means foregoing long review-style memos about esoteric legal concepts and instead quickly providing high-level yet incisive guidance. Due to evolving world events, domestic affairs, and political pressures, the office often faces legal questions for which there may not be a wealth of precedent. Attorneys in the Office of White House Counsel must therefore work collaboratively within the White House and the Department of Justice, relying on each other as a team to ensure that proper legal guidance is delivered to the President. The President should choose a White House counsel who is well-versed in the Constitution, administrative and regulatory law, and the inner workings of Congress and the political process. Instead of choosing a specialist, the President should hire a counsel with extensive experience with a wide range of complex legal subjects. Moreover, while a candidate with elite credentials might seem ideal, the best one will be, above all, loyal to the President and the Constitution. Staff Secretary. The office of the Staff Secretary is rarely visible to the outside world, but it performs work of tremendous importance. The office is similar to a military commander's adjutant, as it is responsible for fielding and managing a vast amount of information at the top of its organization. This includes information on its way into the Oval Office, as well as information flowing out from the Oval Office. Because of its gatekeeping function, the position of Staff Secretary is one of extreme trust, and the individual who possesses it should be vetted to work as an honest broker in the President's service. The office of the Staff Secretary has been described as the last substantive control point before papers reach the Oval Office. A great deal of information is headed toward the Oval Office at any moment. This includes presidential decision memos, bills passed by Congress, which may be accompanied by signing or veto statements, and briefing books, reading materials, samples of constituent mail, personal mail, and drafts of speeches. The Staff Secretary makes certain that these materials are complete, well-ordered, and up-to-date before they reach the President. This necessarily means that the Staff Secretary plays a key role in determining who weighs in on policy matters and when. As noted above, the Staff Secretary also handles information leaving the Oval Office. The President may have questions after reviewing incoming material, may wish to seek more information, or may demand revisions. The Staff Secretary is often responsible for directing these requests to the appropriate places and following up on them to ensure that they are completed. One of the Staff Secretary's critical functions is managing and overseeing the clearance process for the President's daily and nightly briefing book. This book is filled with all of the reading material and leading documentation the President needs in the morning and the evening to help him make decisions. The Staff Secretary also oversees the use of the President's signature, whether by hand or by auto pen, and manages the Office of the Executive Clerk, Office of Record Management, and Office of Presidential Correspondence. Office of Communications. The Office of Communications, which operates under the Director of Communications, conveys the President's agenda to the public through the various media, including speeches and remarks, press briefings, off-the-record discussions with reporters, and social media. Depending on how a president chooses to structure his White House, the Office of Communications may include the Office of the Press Secretary, press office, but no matter how it is structured, the office must work closely with the press office as well as the president's speechwriters and digital strategists. Operational functions of the Office of Communications, including scheduling and running press briefings, interviews, meetings, media appearances, speeches, and a range of other events. The Office of Communications must maintain robust relationships with the White House Press Corps, the White House Correspondents Association, regional stakeholders, and key interest groups. No legal entitlement exists for the provision of permanent space for media on the White House campus, and the next administration should re-examine the balance between media demands and space constraints on the White House premises. Leadership within the Office of Communications should include a communications director who is a direct report to the Chief of Staff, a deputy communications director, a deputy director for strategic communications, and a press secretary. This leadership team must work together closely to drive the national narrative about the White House. The best resource for the Office of Communications is the President. The President conveys the White House's overall message through one or two inaugural addresses, State of the Union addresses, speeches to Congress, and press conferences. The office must also ensure that the various White House offices disseminate a unified message to the public. The Communications Director and Press Secretary in particular should be particularly careful to avoid contradicting the President or delivering conflicting information. The speechwriting team is a critical component of the communications team. Speechwriting is a unique talent. The writers selected must understand policy, should have a firm grasp of history and other liberal arts disciplines, and should be able to learn and adopt the president's style of rhetoric and mode of delivery. The press secretary is the president's spokesperson, communicating to the American people through the media. The press secretary engages with the White House Press Corps formally through press briefings and informally through impromptu gaggles and meetings. Individuals who serve in this role must be quick on their feet, which means, when appropriate, deftly refuting and rebutting correspondents' questions and comments. The communications director must convey the president's mission to the American people. Especially for conservatives, this means navigating the mainstream media to ensure that the president's agenda is conveyed effectively and accurately. The communications director must be politically savvy and very aware of the ongoing activities of the other White House offices. The new administration should examine the nature of the relationship between itself and the White House Correspondents Association and consider whether an alternative coordinating body might be more suitable. Office of Legislative Affairs, OLA. Created by President Dwight Eisenhower, the OLA has continued to serve as the liaison between the White House and Congress. The White House must work with congressional leaders to ensure presidential nominees for roles such as cabinet secretaries and ambassadors are confirmed by the Senate. The White House also relies on Congress to enact reforms promised by the president on the campaign trail, whether those promises relate to health care, education, or national defense. Because Congress holds the power of the purse, White House staffers must ensure that there is enough support on the Hill to secure the necessary funding through the appropriations process to fulfill the president's agenda. The OLA reports directly to the Chief of Staff, and in some administrations has done so under the guidance of a Deputy Chief of Staff, usually the Deputy Chief for Policy. Regardless of the person to whom the OLA reports, however, the office exercises a certain autonomy on behalf of the President and the Chief of Staff in directly influencing congressional leaders of both major political parties. The OLA often must function as the mediator among the parties and find common ground to facilitate the successful enactment of the President's agenda. As is the case with many White House offices, but especially the Office of Communications, the OLA must ensure that congressional leaders receive one unified message. If other actors within the White House maintain their own relationships with congressional leaders and staffers, it may appear that the president's agenda is fractured and lacks consensus. This dynamic has caused real problems for many presidents in the past. Internally, OLA staffers need to be involved in policy discussions, budget reviews, and other important meetings. They must also provide advice to policy staffers regarding whether certain ideas are politically feasible. Externally, OLA staffers have to communicate continuously with congressional offices of both parties in both the House and the Senate to ensure that the President has enough support to enact his legislative priorities or sustain votes. The OLA requires staffers who are effective communicators and can provide a dose of reality to other White House staffers when necessary. Although a policy proposal from within the White House may be a great idea, OLA staffers must ensure that it is politically feasible. OLA staffers must therefore be skilled in both politics and policy. Furthermore, the President should seek out individuals who can advance his agenda and at the same time forge pathways with members of the opposing political parties on other priorities. Most importantly, the OLA must function as a well-oiled machine precisely synced. The President cannot afford to have a tennis player on, much less as the leader of his football team.